What's up, my friends, and welcome into another edition of the All Nittany Lions Podcast here on PHLY, and a happy Thanksgiving week to each and every one of you as you hopefully get some time to celebrate, relax, and enjoy time with the family as we'll get you set for one final Penn State regular season game against Maryland, and we will do that, of course, with my guys to my right, Adam Telefero and Jason Cabinda. Of course, we'll recap the crazy, hectic finish in Minnesota that keeps Penn State's college football playoff hopes alive and at 10-1, a 26-25 win over Minnesota. Again, we'll talk about the college football playoff as a whole, and we'll do that all in the next hour here on PHLY. But first and foremost, as always, gentlemen, a little bit of a short week for us as we were on Thursday last week, back on a regularly scheduled Tuesday. Great to be with you guys. As always, a happy Thanksgiving week to you both. Hopefully you get to spend some time with your families this week and enjoy the time together.
Yeah, man. Happy Thanksgiving to you guys, man. Always good to be back.
Yeah, always nice spending time around holidays, man. Good to talk to you guys.
So let's jump into it. Minnesota, or a game at Minnesota, in which Penn State survives 26-25, and it's kind of why I used the phrase "survive in advance" in the thumbnail today, because there were times where it didn't feel super pretty. Minnesota's defense played well; they were as advertised, and it was a fight to the finish to hold on to win this game. But I think, Jason, you bring it up a lot, and Adam, you've brought it up a lot as well. And sometimes you just have to win your particular matchup on any given week, because there was a lot of crazy, hectic losses that happened around college football this week that we'll get into later in the show. But Penn State survives. They win 26-25. They're 10-1 on the regular season. And before we dive into the first thing that I wanted to get into, I just, as we kind of always do to open up the show, your immediate thoughts on the game last night, or on Saturday night, excuse me. And is survive in advance just appropriate enough for this past weekend?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head, man. It's like we got out of Minnesota with a win. I'll be the first one to admit, man, I can confess to you guys, as that game was going on, I got this feeling in my stomach, like, oh man, this one may not turn out the way we want it to turn out. But I say I give so much credit to the coaches, to the players, and they've exhibited this all season. They find ways to win. They buckle up when they need to. They make plays when they need to. And I'm just, hey man, I'm running out of words to describe this team, because they're finding ways to win. At the end of the day, that's all that matters.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some uncharacteristic mistakes in that game, but I'll say that, like, to get out of there with a win at the end of the day, especially with everything that went on and this past week in college football and along the landscape in general, man, it's awesome to get a win, especially on the road, tough environment. That crowd was really fired up. But like you said, Adam, we made the plays when we needed to. I thought Coach Franklin coached probably one of his gutsiest games he's ever coached. They say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So I like the change in mindset and mentality of this team, of Coach Franklin. And it's more on a consistent basis. We're always playing to win. The whole reserved game, we're up this amount of points, we're just going to try to just hang on. It seems like that mindset is gone and over with, because I feel like we've seen this exact game play out 4 or 5 times over the past few years, and we've lost that game. We've seen it happen. So, for them to make some gutsy calls and to be able to get that out of there, and the players to execute in really, really critical moments, man, kudos and hats off to them.
Gutsy is a much more family-friendly word than I think I would have used, because that was an absolute, just a stone-cold, incredible decision by James Franklin. And it's great that it worked, and it's gutsy when it happens, and it changed the complexity of the game. It allows Penn State to walk out with a win and not give Minnesota the football back. But to go for it on fourth down, I don't think a lot of people expected them to go for it on fourth down the way that they did. Or in general, because as you mentioned, you think maybe you pin them back, you try to have your defense, which had played well to that point, try to serve one more time. But to not only decide we're going for it, to run the fake punt inside your 35 at your 34-yard line is gutsy. I don't know if gutsy's even fair enough, because that was just an unbelievable statement from James Franklin, who said, we are not losing this game. And not only are we not losing this game, we are not giving you the football back. And I thought that the way that he the decision that he made on that fake punt to pick up the yards that it did, and then really, I think was one of his better coaching performances this season. I thought he was aggressive when he needed to be aggressive. They give up the early touchdown, the long touchdown drive. They do a nice job responding. It was a good Minnesota defense who held a very good Penn State offense in check for a bulk of the game. But when it mattered most, I thought James Franklin really stepped up. I thought the coaching staff really stepped up to dictate the pace of play, to control the clock, to control the tempo. And after you go for it and you succeed on fourth down on that fake punt, to be able to then bleed the rest of the clock dry, to not only not give them a chance to get the ball, but to not give them the ball back, period.
Yeah.
Go
ahead, Jason.
Go ahead, Adam.
No, I was just saying. I was
going to say, like,
you go ahead, brother.
It's all you, bro. To say, like, bro, to win not win, to lose the time of possession by 11 minutes. Now, offense just wasn't out there as much as we're normally used to seeing. We're normally the ones dictating the pace of the game and things of that nature. Minnesota kind of pace of that game in general. Hats off to Max Brosmer, because I thought he played a really, really great game. He played a really great game. Their skill players played a really, really great game. Without Brosmer, the game is not even close. And I think he has a cool story coming from UNH. I love seeing guys come from the FCS, bet on themselves. They go to a D1A program and are able to succeed. Like, kudos to him and hats off to him, because I'm sure he came into that game with a chip on his shoulder and things of that nature. But, man, like you said, for them to have that fake punt stashed in the back pocket for a moment like that, and to be able to go out there and have the confidence in your player, that's really what it is, man. Like, it's the conviction and belief in your players that they're going to go out there and execute. I feel like Coach Franklin for a lot of years has been the kind of coach that, play things by the numbers, play the odds, play the safe, when you're playing blackjack, hey, dealer's showing a 5, I'm going to stay, he's playing the books all the time. And I feel like Coach Franklin right now is coaching with his gut and coaching with his instincts. And coaching with conviction and belief in his players, that regardless of the situation that they're in, they're going to go out there and get it done. And then, 3 4th down conversions on the road, you finish with the football and say, we're not even going to give it to you back. I can't explain enough just how huge that was.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And as we were lining up to punt that ball, all the bad scenarios started going through my head. I said, all right, we're going to punt it away. They're going to get it. They're going to have a 15-yard return, probably get a bogus pass interference call. They're going to work their way down the field. And I just envisioned their fans running on the field to upset us, man. And then when it was a fake, oh my gosh, man, my heart just like sank. And when Luke was running down that sideline, man, I was like, this is it, man. If this is not our year, man, I can't tell you what is, because like you said, in years past, I'm not sure if Coach makes that call, but you could tell he just has supreme confidence in his team and his coaches and his players to execute that. And once they had that fake punt, we knew that the game was a wrap. I mean, it's easy for us to say now, but they ran a fake with Drew, or the quarterback sneak with Drew on 4th down, and then of course that last 4th down play, I'm sweating, man, because Allen rolls out to the right, doesn't look like he has anybody. And he finds a safety blanket right there, sitting right outside the end zone with Tyler. And Tyler does the veteran move and just sits down on the 1-yard line, man. It was a stressful game, but a fun game to watch, man.
Yeah. So I want to ask you guys, before we kind of dive a little bit further into some of the James Franklin decisions, the game as a whole. Jason, I'll ask you specifically, because you have played both sides of the ball. Have you ever lined up as the up back in that situation? And what's the idea as kind of the up back if you're getting the football? Is it just get the first down? Like, I mean, assume you're not looking to run for 21 yards. I think you're just trying to pick up the first down in that scenario.
Number one is catch the snap. That's number one. This is an awkward snap. It's not normal. You don't get a whole lot of time to practice it. I mean, they rep it in practice, but you don't rep it a ton. And obviously you're a position where you're not normally the guy catches snaps and things like that. It sounds so simple, but man, when the moments and the lights are really bright, it's something that's easy to mess up. So he caught the snap, caught it on the run, and moved forward. And like you said, it's about get the first down first. Whatever you get after that, that's all icing on the cake. But man, we got to extend this drive and can't get this ball back in our territory only 1 point. I mean, it's as gutsy as it gets. If they don't get that 4th down conversion, they have a field goal in the bag at least. So, that I just want to make sure everybody understands just how big that moment was and just what the risk reward of it was. So, I mean, it's huge. And the blockers did a great job. Obviously, they scouted that look and had 2 lead blockers for the 2 guys that were kind of problem issues. The runs out to the right, acts like it's a bad snap, and Luke finishes off the rest and rips it off for 40 yards or whatever it was, man. That was beautiful. That was absolutely beautiful. Pump fakes are always awesome, man. They really are.
So on top of the decision to make the to go for it there on a fake punt, I thought the other drive that was really impressive, and obviously players have to make the plays on the field, but to respond the way that Penn State did right before the half, because if you guys remember, they go 3 and out, they get the punt blocked, Minnesota scores on the first play of the possession, goes up 17-10. And I understand the special teams play ended the way that it did, and instead of it being 17-17, you're down 19-16 heading into the half. But I thought the response drive, the 6-play, 75 yards to go 75 yards in 44 seconds, was excellent clock management by the players, excellent job by the coaching staff. I thought Andy Kotelnicki called up a good scheme. Obviously, they get a little bit of help with the pass interference, but completions of 11.
Bad pass interference call.
Yeah. Completions of 11 of 28. Like, I thought that was an excellent drive all around by not just the offense, but by the coaching staff as well.
I literally tweeted that at the literally right after that play, and I was like, "That's the I call, but we'll take it." I was huge set up that touchdown there, and we see this a few times now. That's not the first time we see Drew orchestrate a drive going into the half, man. A touchdown drive, like. He's doing that at a very high level right now. He's doing it confidently, dialing it up, obviously. Like, man, the response, these guys just don't flinch. And then I also want to highlight in this game, when we did I don't know what exactly was supposed to happen when Tyler Warren ends up punting that ball. Drew was in there. He looked super frustrated. He got really, really emotional. Probably the most emotional I've really seen Drew on the side, on the bench, things of that nature. And Coach Franklin's over there, man, and just has a quick man-to-man with him. Keeps him composed, refocuses him, and say, hey, calm down, bro. We got a lot of game here, and we're going to freaking need you. And I think after that talk that they had, I think that play happened in the 3rd quarter. After that talk, Drew, I mean, he played lights out after that for 3 straight drives to finish that game. And, like, that was big. So I think that gets lost. But, like, man, you want your quarterback composed. You want your quarterback poised. Yeah, you want to see emotion out of your quarterback, but there's a certain level of being even-keeled that you need in terms of your temperament as a quarterback in order to manage the ebb and flows of the game. I thought Coach Franklin did a really good job just from a coaching perspective of stepping in when he needed to, and he felt Drew got a little bit too over-emotional and was able to calm him down. I think that was very crucial for Drew to continue playing well the way he did after that drive.
Yeah, and I think, Jason, you already hit on it, but I think this is by far probably one of Coach Franklin's best coaching performances probably since he's been at Penn State. I mean, just from the play calling to the way that he managed the team to the way that he managed the emotions of individual players throughout the game. That's, there's something to be said about it. And I know, again, Jason says a lot, keep the same energy because, there's been a lot of detractors around Coach Franklin's decision-making, the way that he's handled different situations throughout the game, throughout the season. But, and just think about it. He said this in his press conference, if that fake punt didn't work, it would have been a whole different narrative this week. But thank God it did, and he's getting a lot of praise. So again, just people are forgetting about that last drive at the end of the first half because I think that was a huge way, for our team to bounce back and go into halftime just down 3 points and bring that momentum into the 3rd quarter. So I just as Penn State fans, it was a roller coaster type game. And I know we said it about 5 times already, but just to come out with a W is just tremendous, man. It just sets them up for big, big opportunities over the next few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good Minnesota defense, an offense that maybe isn't like super electric, but, you guys already highlighted good quarterback play. They don't turn the ball over. Jason, you used the word opportunistic last week to discuss their defense. And I think PJ Fleck is a pretty excellent coach for the most part, and generally speaking, gets more out of the talent pool that he has. then maybe he should, because he's a good coach and they have a good system and of just a super steady, solid defense in front of them. So with all the turmoil that happened across college football this week, and we'll lay it out later in the show, to be 10-1 as opposed to 9-2, because there's going to be conversations about some really big-time powerhouse college football teams that have their second loss, that maybe picked up their third loss, that now are, kind of on the bubble for the college football playoff, and your one loss to the fifth-ranked team, the second-ranked team in the country, and the fifth-ranked team heading into the college football playoff brackets just continues to feel better and better.
Yeah. I was surprised, as aggressive as Coach Franklin was. I thought Coach Fleck was, Minnesota's last possession, they get down to our red zone, and he makes a decision to kick the field goal as opposed to try to knock it in for 6 or 7. So I just, looking
difference
back,
in the game.
That's the difference in the game. And I think it goes back to having that confidence in your team. Maybe, Coach Fleck had confidence in his defense, but you think you're playing the number 4 ranked team in the country. Sometimes I think you need to go for the kill shot there, and they played it safe and came back to bite them.
Got to roll the dice.
We've seen it a couple times. We've seen it a couple times in the NFL this year, I think, guys, where there was 2 opportunities with lesser teams. I think Tampa Bay did it the one time against the Chiefs and didn't succeed. And then inversely, there was a team that could have, I forget exactly what the scenario, but one team went for 2 and didn't get it. The other team didn't go for 2. They ended up going to overtime. I think that was the Bucs and the Chiefs, and the Chiefs went right down the field and scored a touchdown. And when you are the lesser of the 2 teams, I think, Jason, you're right. I think, guys, like, you feel like maybe you want to try to put a proverbial nail in the coffin if you can, and not allow any breath of life for the better team.
Yep.
Yeah, your opportunity while you got it. Like you said, try to put the nail in the coffin. I feel like in that situation, you really have nothing to be bowl eligible. At that point in time, I feel like you just go for it. That's my take.
So we got a lot to get into for the rest of today's show. As we mentioned, we'll talk more about the college football playoff landscape. We'll preview the Maryland Terrapins as we get the final game of the regular season, which is crazy to say, guys. I feel like this season has just absolutely flown by. And we'll do that all here on the All Nittany Lion Podcast. But first, let me tell you about some of our friends here at PHLY. Of course, I've been telling you about Shady Rays for quite some time now, because they are excellent eyewear for every outdoor occasion. 300,000 people can't be wrong, right? 300,000 people have rated Shady Rays 5 stars because of their durable frames and crystal clear optics, and they make for the absolute perfect outdoor adventure choice, whether it be summer, spring, winter, or fall, whatever activity you're doing, going to a game, going camping, hiking, fishing, you're going to go to a theme park in the summer, it doesn't matter. Shady Rays is the way to go. I've been wearing my Shady Rays for years now, and in fact, I switched from another company because of the fact that Shady Rays provides me with some of the most excellent protection in all of eyewear, not only just in terms of monetary decisions and in getting a new pair, but also protecting my eyes from the suns and harmful rays. I struggle with headaches and migraines. Shady Rays has helped me eliminate those while I drive, while I'm outside, and any kind of time that I spend in the sun. But speaking of that protection, if you don't love the pair that you buy, you can return them or get a new pair worry-free up to 30 days. And if the shades you do have take an unexpected hit or damage, don't worry about it. They have the best protection in all of eyewear. Every single pair that you buy is backed by a lost or broken replacement. So exclusively for our listeners, it is the holiday season officially. Shady Rays is giving out the best deal of the season. Head on over to shadyrays.com and use code PHLY for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades that are rated 5 stars by me and 299,999 other people. Basically, what I'm trying to say is a lot of people like these shades. And if you're looking for some incredible quality work, I can't recommend our friends over at Ace enough, because listen, they do leaky pipes, air conditioning problems, faucet issues, plumbing, heating, cooling. If you're not a pro, they're the pros to know, because they take the Helpful Hardware folks jingle that they've had for years and transform it into Helpful Hardware Home Services. They bring that helpful home, the same helpful that you love from the store, right to your front door. So Whatever the issue may be in your house, as I said, it could be an indoor problem. It could be an outdoor problem. Ace has the pros to help you get the job done, not just efficiently, but correctly. So you're not having to worry about going back and back and back. Ace will make sure you are absolutely satisfied with the work that they do on your home. So head on over to Ace Hardware Home Services online, www.acehardswarehomeservices.com, to get started on your next project today. This is the All Nittany Lion Podcast here on PHLY. Welcome back, my guys, Adam Telefero and Jason Cabinda. I'm Tyler Zulli. Penn State beats Minnesota 26-25 to advance to 10-1, and we've used advance, we've used survive, we've used just about every adjective you can think of to describe this game. The one thing, guys, I was very happy with, and I think we've been happy with this for a majority of the season for this Penn State defense, I thought the run defense was excellent in this one. In total, Minnesota ran the ball 35 times. Darius Taylor ran the ball 17 times. He averaged 3.4 yards a carry. Marcus Major, 37 yards on 10 touches, 3.7 yards a carry. As a team collectively, Minnesota ran the ball 35 times for 107 yards and 3.1 yards per carry. They did have the one touchdown, but their long was just 20 yards. And as always, the second half defense was very excellent for Penn State as well. But I wanted to highlight the run defense specifically because I think that they were really outstanding in a game that was going to be shortened by two good defenses, right? And we talked about Minnesota's very excellent defense in the first segment. I wanted to give a quick shout out to the Penn State run defense for this particular performance. Wanted to get your guys' thoughts on how the run defense specifically, but the defense as a whole performed on Saturday.
Yeah, we knew the run game was going to be a big thing in this game. Period. End of story on both sides of the ball. And let's be real, that first half wasn't too pretty in terms of run defense. You mentioned the second half was much better. I think at halftime they had like 85 rushing yards. We only had like 12. And then the script completely flips in the second half. They get 30 or 20 yards or something like that on I don't know how many carries. But it was just a tale of two halves. And we've seen that quite a few times, honestly, this year in terms of the second half, us being a much better team, being able to make adjustments. So I'm glad that trend ended up continuing. And honestly, they had a really good plan for Abdul. I think this is the first team that has actually been able to kind of put a cork on Abdul's run. I mean, they just had a game plan between doubles on the tackles and the tight ends. They just really had his hands full. They gave him a lot of looks, a lot of wing looks with double tight ends. They just put him in a lot of positions in which they were able to kind of nullify his impact a bit in this game.
Yeah, I know we spoke about it last week with the importance of stopping Minnesota's run game, because the big wins that Minnesota has had this year, their backs, have gone over 100 yards or 125 yards, and that's been the key to their success. So being able to slow that run game down a little bit was monumental. But the big thing was also, getting a couple turnovers. Shout out to Dom DeLuca, linebacker, dropping into that pass, and that big turnover. So I think the cool thing about it is, on this defense, is different guys that are stepping up each and every week. Of course, you got the mainstays like Abdul and Jalen and others, but just seeing different guys flash, from week to week is bodes very well for this defense as we go forward into next week in the playoffs.
Glad you mentioned that Dom DeLuca pick, man. I'm telling you, Dom DeLuca looked good on that drop. Hey, quick game. Get your eyes to the sideline on that curl flat. Get you under that curl, man. That was a pretty play. That's like some real linebacker. So I'm glad you highlighted that because I forgot to.
Yeah, buddy.
8-0, baby.
You guys bring up, Abdul's maybe a little bit quieter of a day than what we've seen in weeks past. But the senior left tackle for Minnesota, Ursary, is getting projected as a mid-teens, high 20s first-round pick from a lot of different people. The latest mock draft that I read had him going to the Denver Broncos at 19. A player comp that I saw a lot is Trey Smith. If you guys remember Trey Smith coming out of Tennessee a couple years ago, was a first-round pick as well. Yeah. They really a lot of write-ups, and I'll be honest, and I think we do a pretty good job on this show of transparency. I've not watched a ton of his tape prior to the game, so I've relied upon others who have and people that are smarter than I. But the write-ups are all generally very, very positive on the kid, and I think he did a really nice job on Abdul Carter for the most part at that tackle position. And I think Jason, you brought up earlier in the show the quarterback play. for Minnesota was very good for the most part. And I think Brosmer was protected for a majority of the day. He had a pretty clean pocket to throw from a good bit, did a good job on his own in second levels and things like that. But I thought it was very good, excellent tackle play. And to subdue a guy like Abdul Carter is a difficult task enough as it is. So kudos to him for that game as well.
Yeah, and the receivers made some big plays, man. Like number 9, bro, he made some plays. Like that one ball that he caught, that Jay Reed looked like he was the pick, and then it ended up being a big collision at the very end. Like that was a big boy catch. Like they made some plays that were like, the only way you're gonna beat Penn State is if you make plays like that, and coming away with a few of those. So shout out to them. They really played well, honestly.
Yeah, that's a play that stuck out on my head. I thought it was going to be an interception, and the wide receiver came up with it. And he held on to the ball. He got back up, man. I thought he was going to be down on the field a little bit. So shout out to Minnesota. I think Coach Fleck gave Penn State a lot of kudos, saying this is probably one of the best teams he's played in his time at Minnesota. So I mean, a lot of kudos from them. And they gave when you're the number 4 team in the country, you're going to get every team's best shot. And I think it's going to be no different this weekend. Although I don't think Maryland is to the caliber of Minnesota, but it was they gave Penn State the best shot. We came out.
So Penn State's defense to kind of play off of that, of course, 2 turnovers in this one as well, an interception as you guys brought up, and a fumble recovery as well. Wins the turnover battle, and as you guys have pointed out time and time again, and I think it's an easy discourse to have and talk about how it's an easy path to win games. Win the turnover battle, especially even when Jason, you were referring to, talking about the fact that they lost the time of possession as much as they did. If you can win the turnover battle, that I would assume that helps nullify that a little bit.
Absolutely. I mean, losing the time of possession battle by 11 minutes, I mean, that's a lot. That's not a small amount. I mean, that's almost a whole quarter not having the ball compared to your opponent. So, it's things like turnovers and things of that nature. And not only turnovers, but taking advantage of them when you get the ball, which Penn State, I felt like they did all day. That's really the key and one of the reasons why they came out on top in this game.
One guy from Minnesota, I know we've done a nice job or a decent job, I think, of highlighting some standout players from Minnesota. And I know that they raved about him on the broadcast quite a bit. I thought Coy Parrish, the freshman defensive back, number 3, was really, really good in this one. He ended up with 13 tackles. Now, granted, that may be a product of Penn State getting into the second level a little bit, which is good for Penn State when you have a defensive back have so many tackles. But I thought Parrish was really good in this one as well.
Dude, he's a good player. He's a good player. I knew he was going to be good going into this game. But when I actually watched it and I saw the way he was running with some receivers and, putting a cap on some runs that really could have been 40 or 50-yard runs had he not made those plays, I thought he played really well. He did a good job. He's going to be a star.
Yeah, I mean, full transparency, like we said earlier, I hadn't seen many Minnesota games prior to Penn State playing, and I was impressed. They weren't a pushover. They're going to be a good team in coming years. If they can keep those guys there and add some pieces to that team, I think Minnesota's got a bright future.
One last thing in this game before we kind of turn the conversation to a larger scale college football playoff atmosphere, and of course we'll preview the Maryland game as we wrap up. You guys have brought up the Penn State rushing attack for a couple of weeks now, and after a really electric start, there's been some roller coaster feel to it. Obviously, it kind of got bottled up against Ohio State. How did you guys perceive the run game on Saturday, and what did you make of Katron Allen didn't get not only a touch, didn't get a target either in the first half, and then obviously got some carries in the second half, only ended up going 7 carries for 10 yards. But what did you guys make of the rotation or lack thereof, where it was almost exclusively Nick Singleton in the first half before Katron got some touches in the second?
Yeah, I don't like to speculate. When I was watching the game, I didn't know if it was some type of discipline type thing or what it was, because, we're all accustomed to seeing that rotation. But the one thing that I did see was Singleton looked like he had that like a little extra gear this week. Like he looked like, I know he was dinged up a little bit, but looked like he was hitting that thing, man. And he did the holes weren't exactly there for him, but we did see when K-Tron came in the second half, his first couple runs in the second half, he's gaining 7 yards, 8 yards. So I just think, I still don't know why he didn't get any carries in that first half. I don't think it was even asked during his press conference unless I missed it. But, hey, those two guys are going to be so important to us as we go forward. But the thing I saw that I really liked was Nick had that explosiveness that I think has been missing earlier this year because he's been banged up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see all three of them in the game more. And I talked about this on the post-game show last week. Because there's a lot you can do with those three guys, Tyler Warren, Nick Singleton, and K-Tron, when they're all in the game at the same time. Whether it's that three-back look or whether it's Ty on the outside and, Nick and K-Tron in chip positions and the play action and things of that nature. Like, there's a lot that can be done with them. Really three of your better / best players on when all three of them are on the field together, good result. And so I hope we can continue to raise and all three involved. Because K-Tron can lead up. We've seen K-Tron lead up and block on sweep motion to Nick Singleton, a lot of variations of things, chipping and getting out into the flat. We saw that against USC, and Nick caught that ball in the flat, was able to out leverage the linebacker and get to the end zone. There's a lot that can be done there. So I hope that can continue, because I think we're best when we're evenly distributing the ball to our playmakers.
Yep.
We still got a lot to get into here on the All Nittany Lion podcast. We'll just jump into the college football playoff and the bracket that will get announced tonight. Some changes are expected. We'll talk about that. And of course, we will preview the Maryland game in just a moment as we wrap things up. But first, let's tell you about some of our friends here at PHLY. And of course, I'm going to tell you about Empire today, because I can't say enough good things about the quality of customer service that Empire provides, right? Because there's a million different big box stores, and maybe they're going to offer you some good product, right? But do they offer you the same customer service that Empire today does? Not only do they give you the ability to shop in store, which helps, of course, but the online process gives you an in-store feel online. And what they're going to do is take the difficulty out of it and make it as simple for you as they possibly can. And they say that their philosophy is to not only help you with what you need, but to not overwhelm you with thousands of choices and substitutes. So what they leave out of their selection is just as important as what they leave in. So Empire's product team exhaustively combs through thousands of different products, and I literally mean thousands, to find you the perfect style. And if you're shopping online, one of the best things that you can do is use the virtual floor designer to see how your floor is going to look in just about any space. So all you got to do is snap a picture of your room and send it onto the virtual floor designer, and they will show you exactly what your flooring is going to look like in your home. They pride themselves on excellent, convenient shop at home services. They will help customers shop for floors when they use the virtual floor designer all the way through the purchase process. They want to make sure that they are here for you every step of the way. And of course, they service their own warranties. So if they have an issue and it does arise, just give Empire a call. They will service the warranties themselves. You won't have to track down a manufacturer's number. So head on over to empiretoday.com and receive a free in-home estimate. And all listeners of the show will receive $350 off when they use the promo code PHLY. Again, that's empiretoday.com/PHLY for more details. And while we're here and at it, let me tell you about some of the best details in the city, and that is with our friends here at PHLY. And it has never been a better time to get in on the Die Hard program, because we are just continually adding excellent content creators and writers to our website. But not only that, but we're adding community to the Philadelphia sports scene as well. So head on over to allphly.com/events, and you'll see some of the best events that we have coming up for you, including on the 22nd of December, a bus trip heading down to Washington as your football team heads down to Washington to take on the Commanders in a divisional showdown. What that will include is bus trip, tailgate, game tickets will be made available. You'll have the ability to mix and match the right ticket and program that fits best for you. We have some incredible features coming up, including our Flyers Suite Takeover on January 11th, Saturday, January 11th. As the Flyers take on the Ducks, you'll be able to sit in the suite at the Wells Fargo Center. Your package includes a suite ticket, food and drinks all night. You'll hang out with the best hockey podcast crew in the city. And I don't say that biasly. I say that because every time I watch Charlie and Bill and Kelly and JP, I learned something new about this exciting hockey team that is in the city. So head on over to allphly.com, head on over to allphly.com/events for all of our latest events tabs, and become a diehard today. You'll get incredible merch, a free t-shirt when you sign up, and 20% off all paid events when you do attend our next event. So please come hang out with us and join our diehards today. Welcome back to the All Nittany Lion Podcast here on PHLY. As we put a bow on the Minnesota game, we'll look forward to the Maryland game in just 1 second. But guys, it was a crazy, hectic college football weekend. Here are just some of the games within the top 16 that ended up in losses for those teams. 6 teams within the top 16 lost this week, including 4 of which were road losses to unranked teams. Now, Indiana, of course, goes on the road and loses to Ohio State pretty big by 23, 38-15. The other ranked loss was BYU losing on the road to Arizona State. And I don't know if you guys had the opportunity to see that game or not, but Arizona State fans stormed the field, and then the officials decided they were putting a second back on the clock, so they had to usher everybody off the field for one play for everybody to run right back onto the field. It was a super crazy time at Arizona State. But IU loses to Ohio State, BYU loses to Arizona State, and then losses by Bama to Oklahoma, pretty convincingly, by the way, 24-3. Ole Miss loses to Florida 24-17. Colorado loses to Kansas 37-21, and Texas A&M loses to Auburn 43-41. Talk about an ultimate shakeup within the top 15 or so teams within the college football playoff landscape. And I know we've used this and we've said this a million times, but the survive and advance motif for this Penn State team became so much more applicable this weekend, because if you lose, you're right there in the conversation with all of those teams we just mentioned.
Huge to get a dub, bro. Huge. Well, I mean, my Colorado team goes down. Dion, after the game, let him know. He said, man, you know what happened? You guys have been drinking too much of the Kool-Aid. You've been listening too much about how good everybody's been telling you are, and you listen to it, and you're internalizing it, and you thought you were just going to show up. He said, we needed to get humbled today, and they did. You know, like you said, to an unranked Kansas team. Now they lost. I mean, I think there might be – it's no longer in their hands is my point in terms of them getting to that championship game. So long in their hands, a lot of stuff, you know, has to happen for them now. Indiana, you said it nicely that they lost, so I'll say Indiana got whooped. Indiana got whooped. Exactly what I thought was going to happen. IU being IU, I wasn't a true believer. I knew that I was going to have to see that Ohio State game. That was going to determine whether I believed them or not. And I'll tell you this, I'd be very, very surprised at this point in time that Ohio State loss doesn't severely affect the committee's decision as to whether Indiana gets in or not. Because like I told you, we've been talking about this for weeks now. In these games, and we talk about, okay, what's the metric that they're going to, if Indiana does lose, what's the metric they're going to lose to decide what the difference between Penn State and Indiana is? And it's going to be that game, because that's their only they play. It's going to be how they win or how they lose. These things matter. This 26-25 win by us, it's not the greatest look, but the win. You go and lose 31-7. Now you got the whole committee. Are they for real? Penn State only lost 20-13, so they're just not on Penn State's level. So should we put them in? So these are the things that we're going to have to look at, you know, going, and the committee's going to have to and make these decisions. But it's all important stuff.
I can't wait to see what the rankings look like tonight. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that Indiana is in. As a Penn State fan, I would love to, you know, I saw some projections having, you know, Penn State playing Indiana in the first round. I would love that. And I think, you know, the one, just watching these games, I'm thankful Alabama's out. Like, Alabama would scare me in the playoffs. You know, just one game. These dudes are battle tested. Milroe is a great quarterback. I didn't see the whole Alabama-Oklahoma game, but just looking at that score, I'm like, man, these guys are gone. So there's just one less team from a Penn State perspective that we have to worry about. But my big question is now, with this weekend, that Michigan-Ohio State game, you know, it doesn't matter what the records are. That all goes out the window. And Michigan, for some weird reason, they have all, you know, these last few years, they've had Ohio State's number. And if Michigan wins that game, our boys are back. And I'm kind of like half-hearted on that, because I'm of the mindset I'd rather just sit back, let Ohio State, Oregon go at it in the Big Ten championship. Let's ride our 6th seed into the playoffs and go that route. I don't know what you guys are thinking, but I'm interested to see, what your guys' thoughts are from that standpoint.
Well, that's what all the SEC teams are saying. That's their main argument right now is like, hey, the ones that are sitting at, the Georgias that are sitting at, 11, 12, they're like, hey, it might be a better path for us in terms of getting to the Natty than to have to go and try to win the conference championship game. And, there's going to be a lot of decisions as to whether, the losers of these conference championship games, are they automatically in if they were technically the top two teams out of the conference? Are we going to let a Penn State in who doesn't make it to the Big Ten championship and not an Ohio State team? There's a lot of conversations to be had here, and I'm hoping that the committee decides at the end of the day that whoever we believe the top 12 teams are, regardless of record of this, that ends up getting in, because I think that's how it should be. But we'll see how it plays out. It'll be really interesting.
So, Adam, I'm glad you brought up that you hope that Indiana is in, come playoff time, because I agree, because not only would it be an excellent, fun first round Big Ten matchup if it were to be the case, I also think that Indiana is the buffer for Penn State. Like, if Indiana's in, Penn State's definitively in, because of, as Jason, you brought up, the commonality of their one opponent, and it was a 7-point loss versus a 20-plus point loss. So Indiana is the clear buffer team for Penn State at this point, determining if they'll get in, when they get in, what their seeding may be. With inversely, like if an Ole Miss remains in, or if a Georgia remains in, or I guess Georgia only has 2 losses, so they'll be in. But if an Alabama remains in, with 3 losses, and instead it's one of those 2 teams as opposed to 1-loss Indiana, the buffer becomes much more difficult to maneuver. And I think we can all agree that Penn State deserves to be in the playoff, assuming they win against Maryland this upcoming weekend. But it's how does the committee react to that kind of conversation, where they seem to have this mindset that Penn State hasn't played anybody, even though strength of schedule will dictate otherwise. And they do have a ranked win both now and when they played Illinois. Illinois was a ranked opponent, and they're a ranked opponent again. I think that like Nick Saban was conversing about Penn State the other day and saying, well, they haven't beaten a top 20 team. And notice he was very specific in saying top 20 as opposed to top 25, because it would, don't let the facts get in the way of a good story type of thing. But I think that Indiana is a true buffer for Penn State, because if they're in, there's no question about it, Penn State's a playoff team.
Yeah. My biggest thing is, like, as long as they don't drop below 6, because at the 6th seed, you play your first round, and in that second round, you're avoiding the Big Ten champ and you're avoiding the SEC champ. So you're playing a Miami or a BYU or whoever it may be. So I'm so locked in on that 6th seed, because I see I see a path from that standpoint. Yeah. But we'll see. At the end of the day, if you want to be a champ, you got to play who you got to play anyway. But I just love where that 6th seed, how that plays out.
So if I asked you guys, I think this isn't a trick question. I'm just going to throw that out there. If I asked you guys between Clemson, SMU, and Miami, who has the best quarterback?
Oh, that's Miami, without a doubt.
Right. It's Miami, right? So I say that because I think that Cam Ward will cause problems for any team that they face. I don't know how good their defense is. I don't know how good the rest of their team is, comparable to some of these SEC teams. But if you cannot have a Cam Ward, like I think SMU is maybe a difficult opponent for Miami. And I do think that if SMU and Miami play in the ACC championship game, I could see a path where SMU beats Miami. And then the numbers flip, right? SMU gets the bye and Miami's like the 11 or 12 seed. But if you can find if this thing plays out in Penn State's favor, where they do end up as the 6, and as you brought up, Adam, they play the ACC champion, that path becomes, and again, it's like the conversation we had last week, where I would think in that capacity, I would almost feel less comfortable winning week 1 than I would about getting to the semifinals at that point, which is crazy to say. But I think that the SEC opponent that they'll likely play in the first round, assuming it is an SEC opponent, might be a more difficult task than your ACC or Big 12 winner.
Yeah, I agree. But I don't know. I got this weird feel. I sound crazy right now, I don't know why I got this feeling Michigan is going to do something to Ohio State this weekend. I don't know why. I could be completely
They got the
out of
number.
But I just, for something's telling me Michigan's going to get Ohio State this weekend. And then our boys going to end up playing Oregon in the Big Ten championship.
I honestly have that feeling too. Like in the Ohio State building, they don't talk about Penn State. They don't talk about Indiana or any of the team. The team that they talk about in the game that is the game for them is Michigan. Every single year. Like it's Big Ten championship and it's beat Michigan. Those are the two main goals and main things that are talked about in that building, and Michigan's had their number these past few years. Is it a tall task for Michigan and they're playing at the shoe at Ohio State? Is it a tall task to ask? Yes. Is it something that they can pull off? Yes, I think they can. And I think, like I said, like when we talk about this Indiana team and how they've been blowing teams out and all this, there's an aura, man, that you can't deny it. There's an aura about the name, about the school, about your history and past and what has happened in the past, where in Indiana being Ohio State, man, like it sounds like a dream for them, straight up. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like a dream. And that's why I said, I just don't think they're for real until I see them play this team, because you got to get over that aura. You got to have a belief that is so strong that completely repels everything from the past and all that's happened in the past in your history of playing each other. Like I just didn't see it happening. And when it comes to this Michigan Ohio State game, I know the Michigan players are going there. Well, hey, at the end of the day, we're going to spoil their season. And man, what better of a team to be fully motivated to push off their rival than a Michigan team going to Ohio State? I mean, I don't think the picture could be better for us.
It's funny too, Jason, because if you watched the first 4 drives of Indiana and Ohio State and then turned it off, you would have gone, man, this Indiana team looks excellent, right? Because they forced Ohio State 3 and out, and then they have a 70-yard 11-play drive, and then Ohio State goes up and down the field. There's a bunch of penalties on the drive. It ends up being a 15-play drive, and IU gets a goal line stand. And you looked at it and you said, punt, touchdown, goal line stand. Oh my goodness, Indiana might be legit. And because it was efficient and they stood up when they needed to stand up, and then they went punt, fumble, down, end of the half, punt. Like it unraveled so quickly.
Yep. It did. Got out of hand quick.
Yep.
All right, so tonight we'll find out where Penn State sits. I think most of us, we can come to the agreement. The likelihood is they'll probably remain as the 6 in the college football bracket, and we'll see who the hypothetical 11th team is going to be. Could be Indiana, could be SMU, could be one of the SEC teams that we've not had a chance to talk too much about. But before we get to the Maryland game, Adam, you brought something up about facing Alabama in a playoff game. And I know it's a different head coach and it's a little bit of a different team, but with Jalen Milroe at the helm, I think that there may not be a team this year that has had a larger chasm between like their peaks and their valleys, because last week they lose 24-3 to Oklahoma and they look pretty dreadful, but they've had some wins this year that were impressive. And Jalen Milroe is a wildly successful quarterback with an array of skills and a skill set that like you just don't want to face come playoff time. And they have a 17-year-old freshman wide receiver who's excellent at his position. And Jason, you bring up like that aura. There's an aura about it being Alabama, even without Nick Saban. It's still Alabama. It's such an interesting team where when they're playing at their peak, they're an excellent football team. And then last weekend, you see them put up 3 points in Norman against an Oklahoma team that's not particularly good this year.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you catch Alabama on the wrong Saturday, and it could be problems for you. And the thing that I just keep going back, these guys have played in big games. I mean, these juniors and seniors, they've played in national championship games. They've been through the fire. So this is not going to be anything new for them if they get to the playoffs. So that team, out of all the teams that, may still be in the mix, they scare me the most because, like you said, depending on which day you catch those guys, if you catch them on the day when they're all clicking, it could be problems for you.
Yeah, their defense has struggled at times this year. In general, that Alabama defense, which is something that we're not used to seeing, especially in the back end. But um, I mean, this is one of those teams where they go as far as Jalen Milroe goes. And I do think truly that he's improved this year. I thought last year he was way more of a runner than he is a passer. I thought he's really taken strides passing the football this year. Kind of a Lamar Jackson type of arc that he had in college, because I think Jalen has that similar type of explosiveness where like, man, he can rip off a game breaking play in a heartbeat if you give him that space. He's that type of player. But and when you go out there, you throw 3 picks. I mean, throw 6 on a wide receiver screen to the outside. I mean, it's just really hard to recover from that. And I thought, Oklahoma took advantage of that and really just they never let Alabama get that confidence and get going in that game in general.
All right, guys, as we wrap up today's show, let's turn our attention to the final regular season game of the year, a game in which the 10-1 Penn State Nittany Lions will take on the 4-7 Maryland Terrapins, who are 1-7 in Big Ten play. And, I don't know if you guys feel this way. I always feel this is a kind of storyline with Maryland where they play pretty successful football in their non-conference slate. And maybe they don't play the greatest competition in the world, but they generally seem to come out of non-conference play 3-1. They win their first conference game against Northwestern or Purdue or something like that. And then things seem to kind of fall apart. And they started the year 3-1 this year. They've lost 4 in a row. They've lost 6 of their last 7. And in all of their Big Ten losses except 1 this year, they've scored 24 or fewer points. So one of my coworkers here at PHLY is a Maryland grad and a diehard Maryland fan. And I asked him, I said, how you feeling? He goes, this is going to get bad. He goes, they'll be lucky to stay within 2 scores. They are going to have to play the perfect game to stay within 2 scores of Penn State. And he's a pretty realistic Maryland fan. Like, obviously, he roots for his team. He loves his team. But he's a very realistic, unbiased fan. He's not feeling super confident about this game.
Yeah, man, you look at it. I mean, these games haven't even been close. I mean, they beat USC by 1. They lost to Michigan State by 3. But the rest of the Big Ten games, they've lost by at least 2 scores. And I'll be the first one to admit I haven't seen many Maryland games this year, but I just don't see this game being close. Hopefully they prove us right. I think the biggest thing from a Penn State perspective is getting out healthy and hopefully getting your guys out by halftime. Because I always think about, with this last game, you get a silly targeting penalty or something like that, and we have a guy out for the first half of a playoff game. So if we can we get in and get out and go into the playoffs, that's it, man.
Don't you put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby.
I'm not doing it.
I'm about to say, I didn't even think about that as a possible option, but it is an option. You'd love to see your reserves, get in there and get some good minutes. I don't think this Maryland team is as bad as Purdue, but they're not very good. It's one of those games where we got to take care of business. We'll be at home, and honestly, most importantly, like, it's senior night. I don't think we highlight things like that enough. Hopefully, it won't be their last game in Beaver Stadium, because hopefully we'll have that first round home playoff game. But in general, man, to finish off the regular season with senior night, you want to send those guys out the right way. I think the seniors on this team, the older guys, have done a really tremendous job of leadership and handling all the narratives surrounding this team and rallying around each other in games and really believing in each other and playing for each other. So I think it's important that they make sure they go out there and send these seniors out the right way and the way that they deserve.
Yeah.
Guys, one Maryland player, and James Franklin always highlights the players to keep in mind in his Monday or Tuesday press conferences. One guy that I think is, just statistically speaking, jumps off the page at you for this Terrapins team is Ty Felton, the wide receiver. 92 catches this year, just shy of 1,100 yards, 9 touchdowns. He is the bulk of their passing offense statistically. They have thrown for 3,100 yards this year, which is actually the 12th most in college football, which is surprising for an offense that hasn't put up a ton of points. But they've thrown for 3,100 yards, and he's accounted for just about 1,100 of them. Statistically speaking, he is the guy that I think Penn State will defensively be circling for sure.
Yeah, I
Yeah, I
agree.
mean,
Go ahead, Chase.
go ahead. They do a good job. Like, I think Maryland has always had the type of players that not only are like good route runners, but like they do a good job scheme wise of getting their players in open space with blockers in front of them. Like I've always looked at Maryland as a team each and every year, almost each and every year, that does like the best in terms of wide receiver screens and gimmicky plays on the outside, things of that tunnel screens, things of that nature. Like they always have one or two really good gadgety wide receivers that when they get the ball in their hands and blockers in front, they can really make things happen. Like low key, like outstanding punt returners that are playing wide receiver has been their receiver types over these years. So they always do a good job of that. 1,100 yards. I didn't know he had that, man. I know he's a really good player, but they have a couple of guys skill wise that can really go. Those are going to be the problem guys. We shut them down. They're not going to have much to do offensively.
Maryland always when you play schools like Maryland, Rutgers, and Pitt, because I feel like all these schools have a bunch of dudes that if they had it, they're mad because they wanted to go to Penn State. I say that jokingly, but a lot of these guys, like, they're pissed off because they never got an offer from Penn State. You know, these dudes from Maryland, dudes from Rutgers, dudes from Pitt, and they're like, this game I'm going to show Penn State, I'm going to show their staff that they missed on me. I'm going to ball out against these guys because I should have been playing at Penn State. I know, I'm a little biased, but I truly believe that, man, because it's just a lot of hate. I mean, even when I was playing there, it was a lot of hate from these dudes because I just felt a lot of jealousy because they weren't playing at Penn State, man. So it makes me nervous because these guys are going to be trying to ball out, trying to show everyone that they should have been there. So, like I said, if our guys play our game and do what you're supposed to do, I think we get out with no issues. But you always got to watch out for these type of teams because these guys are playing with something to prove.
And I think, Adam, kind of adding to that, like over the years, and especially just even in recent years, Maryland's done a nice job of putting some individual, really, really good players on the field. You start with Stephon Diggs. You talk about DJ Moore, Yannick Ngakoue. Like these are guys that have had legitimate NFL careers and long NFL careers and individually speaking, massively talented players. And maybe just as a team haven't quite been to the level of what they would have hoped to achieve since kind of coming over to the Big Ten specifically. But it's hard to compete at a level, when maybe your talent level is not as great as some of the other Big Ten teams, but also they have 75 penalties this year. That's 100th in college football. It's just too many penalties for a team that, as a collective unit may not be as good as the opponent that they're lining up against in a majority of their weeks.
You can't win with all those penalties, man. I mean, we talked about that early on with our own Penn State team with some of the penalties that we were having. So I think that just goes, by this time of the year, if you still are lacking that discipline, I don't think anything's going to change in this game. So we hope that they keep that trend going and shoot themselves in the foot, and again, let our guys get out of this game unscathed.
Guys, it has been an absolute pleasure, as always. I hope that each of you have a wonderful Thanksgiving week. I am thankful for both of you for the opportunity to do this show each and every week. It is one of my favorite hours of the week to get to chat Penn State football with you both. So my best to you and your families on this Thanksgiving weekend as we wrap up this show. I hope you both have a very excellent week.
Same to you, my friend. Same to both of you guys, man. It's an honor doing it with you guys.
Hey, Charles,
that will wrap things up for us here today on the All Nittany Lion Podcast here on PHLY. We will be back next Tuesday to wrap up the season finale, review the season finale against the Maryland Terrapins as we await what Penn State's fate is going to be. Still an outside shot of potentially competing in the Big Ten championship. It would require an Ohio State loss to Michigan, which Adam and Jason feel like they have this sneaky suspicion about it. So maybe we are talking about a Big Ten championship appearance against Oregon coming up. If not, we will talk about who their college football playoff opponent will be, where they'll sit in the bracket. And of course, we'll talk about the season as a whole. So I hope everyone out there has a wonderful Thanksgiving week. We will talk to you all next week on next Tuesday, 4:00. We hope to talk to you then. Thank you so much for hanging out with us here on the All Nittany Lion Podcast. For Adam Telefaro, for Jason Kabinda, myself, Tyler Zulli. Again, having an excellent Thanksgiving, and we will talk to you next Tuesday.
We all silly like the mayor.